Why did you do that with her?
I think that was around.
Maybe. Would have been 1980.
I remember. I was born in 77, so I can remember that a little bit. Like snippets of it.
All right, let's wait till he's done. You're videotaping me already? Make sure you make me look pretty. You want to shot me? I look thin. No, give me hair.
No, no. This is
I have
a.
more hair than my dad, so you know it works.
You gotta tell my wife that. My wife keeps telling me that Rick has more hair than that. I said, come on, look at that and look at this. I mean, I know this is bad, but there's more hair here.
This is all on video.
Make sure that he gets that. Make sure he gets that one for sure.
I am not stopping this.
Can we start?
Let's just get it going.
Yeah, I think
Let's just move it along.
Okay, so here's these questions. You guys can handle whatever you want to do. Let me explain what is that the one? Is it? There's another thing I gotta read. Can we start? Oh yeah. So the idea here is that there's things that happen with my relatives' lives 200 years ago that I didn't know until I did genealogy. Other people did it. We found out stories, and I found out things. And what I found was that I wished that people at that time had kept more stories, had recorded more things, had taken more pictures so that I could see it. And so there's some very interesting stories that a lot of people don't get. Like for instance, did any of you guys know that your great, I don't know how many greats it is because you guys were younger, grandfather Pugmire got arrested for murder because of a baptism in England? Did you ever hear that? So here's what happened, and I'll tell you this story, then you can ask questions to me. So he lives in England, and he gets baptized, and he becomes the branch president. And so they're having a baptism, and this woman would constantly tell people how much she hated the Mormons and said that she would have to die, somebody had to murder her before she'd ever be a member of the church. And then she had to change her heart, and she got a testimony, and she wanted to be baptized. And so they went to this small river, they thought small, in England to baptize her. And as your great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather put her under the water, he lost grip of her, and she floated off and drowned. And so since this woman was on record of saying she would die first before she'd become a Mormon, they arrested him for murder because they found her body washed up down shore. See, these are things you didn't know. Wouldn't it be great if you actually had him telling that story? So that's the background. So, with that being said...
Is that why he immigrated to America?
No, it wasn't. They ended up clearing him on that.
So,
I think it would be good if you can sit down, especially the person that's videoing can stay close and kind of tripod the thing so...
Should I comb my hair?
No.
Is that all right? Should I take my gum out?
Won't have a whole lot of...
Is this better? Good posture?
Can I sit
I don't
down?
want to keep the barrier between us.
We're having a good conversation.
All right.
it's better up there. A little more like,
Oh, yeah. I was pontificating.
yeah.
All right.
You could probably hear you better up.
Okay, I'll sit back up.
Yeah, here.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, wait. We gotta wait.
Caitlin, why'd you
I thought it was... Okay, start? Okay. All right.
So when did you figure out that Regina was the one you wanted to marry? How did
So
that-
this is a very funny story. I was going to BYU and Regina was going to BYU. And I was pledging a fraternity and she was rushing a sorority. And we were at some game playing Dart Wars in the Harris Fine Arts Center. And afterwards, we were supposed to all go with them and our club to get pizza. And somebody came up to us and said, hey, would you mind giving a couple people a ride? And I said, sure. And it was me and my brother and this friend of ours named Craig. And it was Tom. And so these two women, very good-looking women, they brought them up and said, you got to give these girls a ride. We said, okay. And we gave them a ride to pizza. And I thought in my mind that night, I really like that one girl. I think I'm going to ask her out. So Regina was keeping a journal as part of rushing her sorority, And in her journal, we still have it, it says, went and played Dart Wars, got these 3 suckers to pay for our pizza. It was Tom, Craig, and some other guy. I don't remember his name.
I could have married that.
That was me. So then, we kept trying over the next 5 months to date. And I would ask her out, she'd go, and then there'd be a few months in between. And then finally we started dating more steady, and 2 years later we got married. So that's how we. Some other guy, she can't remember my name. Some other guy.
So what did you graduate?
I graduated in 1985. I graduated in business management from the Merit School of Business at BYU with an emphasis in marketing and international business.
Okay.
And then since then, in 2008, I got to go to the Marine Corps War College and got my master's degree in strategic studies.
And you worked with the ATF.
I started off when I was 30 years old. I got a job with ATF. Funny story, not what I was looking for. I interviewed out of college with NSA and CIA. NSA wanted me to do translation because I spoke Korean for my mission, and that seemed very boring to me. The CIA guy that recruited me kept asking me more and more weird questions and made me feel uncomfortable, so I stopped that process, and I ended up graduating and going into retail management. And then I wanted to get back up to Seattle because I wanted to go to international trade. And so I got an offer from Tim and Rick to come up and work at their shop. My thought was I'll come up and just work for a year just to get me back up to Seattle so I can interview with these other jobs. And one of my clients that I had when I did sales for them, we got to be really good friends, and he and his wife Regina and I did stuff together all the time, and I was complaining about not enjoying my job working at the body shop. And he said, well, you ought to interview with my dad's agency, they're hiring. I said, well, who's your dad's agency? And he said, well, that's the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. And so, okay. So I went and took the test, and I thought I bombed it because I got an 84. And then just to show that I think there was some divine intervention in getting the job, it so happens that the special agent in charge of the Seattle Field Division, his secretary, was a Mormon. And she saw on the application that came through that I had graduated from BYU. So she took a special interest and kept putting my application on the top, which was very nice of her. And this one day she says, we're trying to set up an interview. I said, well, I didn't think you guys would want to interview me. I didn't do very well on the test. And she said, are you kidding me? And I said, yeah, I got an 84. And she says, I'm going to send you some test results. And she sent me the average scores of everybody that took the test in the country, that testing cycle. And I was in the top 5%. So that's why they were trying to recruit me. Most people, I guess, failed this test. So I went there, I sat down for the interview, and I was expecting to have them interview me and then maybe call me back. And it was a full day process, and by the time they were done in the end of the day, the guy offered me a job for Helena, Montana. I was like, where? And he said, Helena, Montana. I said, can I think about it? It's Friday afternoon. And he'd not been expecting to have somebody not jump at the chance. So he said, well, sure, you could think about it. You have till Monday morning at 9 o'clock. And so I said yes, and then I started working for them, and I worked until 2014. I turned 57, and in the federal government, federal law enforcement agents have to retire at 57. So I retired from them, and now I work as a contractor back to the government.
So crazy.
I guess the question I had, since there's so many kids in the family, who did you buddy up the most with in the family?
Well, that's interesting. So, you just listen to all of them. They tell all the stories. So the two that I was closest to, just because of age, was Sharon and Tom. I was probably closest emotionally with Sharon, but Tom, because we're only a year apart and we were both boys, we ended up doing most things together. He was 1 year ahead of me in high school.
I remember that.
And so we would always be the ones going on the sports teams together and the dances together. And then, we ended up going the same mission. I went 2 years before him. I went to Korea, and when I got back, he had got his call, and I got down to BYU and got a job teaching at the MTC, teaching Korean, and I taught Tom Korean while he was going to the MTC.
Wow.
So, yeah, it was kind of interesting. And then when he got back home, we all stayed at my, rented a room at my Uncle Bud's house that they own just south of campus. And so we roomed together right up until I think it's in September, right before I got married. I rented a house anticipating Regina and I were going to get married, and I moved out then. So for about 2-3 years we roomed together. Now, if you're asking who do I hang out with more now that we're adults, it's your mother. If you're out here, if you ask who I hang out with the most, it's their father, because he's closest in proximity and we get along, and we always
They live
great.
on the same coast.
So Rick had a chance to come back for a job back east, and when he first got back there, Gail wasn't with him, and so we offered to let him live. We have a third story in our house, and we offered to let him live there with us. He lived there for 8 or 9 months, and Rick and I probably got closer during that time than we ever had before, and now we're very close friends, and we do stuff all the time together. But if that had not happened, if that circumstance had not happened, we would never have had the opportunity to get that close together as brothers, because he's 5 years older than me. I mean, think about
He's
it.
the oldest of it.
Yeah, he's 5 years older than me. We were never in the same school. We were never on the same teams. We were never together for anything. I mean, the most I remember is when I was a kid, he used to practice his wrestling moves on me and tie me up and throw me in a trunk. But other than that, so
Because he was in wrestling, I remember.
yes, he did. He was. So yeah. What else you want to know? You don't have to ask out there. You can. Something else.
What did you like most about Korea?
So Korea then and Korea now is very different. When I went there in 1977, they called it a democracy, but it really wasn't. Park Chung-hee was the president, and it was a dictatorship. And if you rose up against him, he would have the secret police come and snatch you up away. It wasn't until when Tom finally went there as a mission, they started having riots with students and that they finally had a real democracy. But they were pro-American because the Americans were the only people keeping the North Koreans on the other side of the DMZ up there. And so they always treated us very well. But the Korean people weren't used to having Americans over there at all, not like now. And so we were like an anomaly. We were strange. And if we really wanted just to get into a house because it was cold or it was hot, all we had to do was walk up and tell them we had this cool movie we wanted to show them, and we were Americans, and they would let us in. Now, that usually didn't get you too far when it came to teaching the gospel, because they let you in because they were going to see a neat movie and talk with the Americans, not because they were interested in church. But what was great about it was the fact that you were in a country where the church, for the most part, in the leadership portion, was still in its infancy. And so you could really see people that you met and baptized immediately be put in leadership positions and see them grow through the church while you were still there. Where, for instance, where I had in Latin America, if somebody were to be baptized, it would, no matter what a great person they were, it would be years and years before you'd see them in a leadership position. So that was kind of cool to see. I really liked the idea that it was a completely different culture at the time. Everything was very different. Maybe 5% of the people had a car. Everybody else took public transportation. There's only about maybe 15% of the people had indoor plumbing. Everybody else had outhouses. And they had people that came around with a truck. And if the truck could get up to their house, they had a big vacuum cleaner they'd stick in the back hole of the outdoor outhouse, and they'd suck all the stuff out. Or they'd come up with buckets and they couldn't get up there, and they'd bucket it out, and then take it out and spray it into the fields to fertilize. So if you didn't boil it or peel it, you couldn't eat it. But you always get sick, but not very sick. You get dysentery. But you always had to drink boiled water or soda from the local market, but you couldn't drink water out of the tap.
So what was your most memorable experience when you were in grade school?
Grade school.
What do you remember anything from grade school?
I remember being sent to the principal's office so often in second grade that I knew how to work. Do you guys know what a mimeograph machine is?
Yeah.
I know you do. There was not photocopy machines. There was a mimeograph machine. You put it on this round and you just and it had ink in it, and you'd smell it. And it smells so
That's a blue and it's like a
Yeah.
paper's over top.
So when the people got sent to the principal's office, they didn't just let them sit there; they'd make them work. And so I was always down there working the mimeograph machine instead of in class. Until one time, I was so mad at my teacher in 7th grade that I was going to go home, and I was back in the coat closet grabbing my coat and gloves, and she sent me to the principal's office, and walked me down there by the ear. And then the principal was so mad, he told me to grab the desk and hit me 10 times with the yardstick and broke the yardstick. When I went home, I told my mom, and those of you that have met Beverly know what was going to happen next. It didn't matter if I earned it or not. She grabbed me, we were down to that school within a half an hour of closing, and she was yelling at that principal like there's no tomorrow. That man didn't know what hit him. And from that point forward, I was good. I never had to go home. So, back when I was growing up, you can't tell by the way I am now, I'm very ADD, but they didn't diagnose me as ADD back then. It was just you were hyperactive. You were a behavioral problem. You didn't, you didn't behave in class, you weren't obedient. So I had a tough time in grade school and middle school because I would grasp what they're talking about, be done with it, and then be like, okay, now what are we doing? And they weren't ready for it because they're teaching everybody, so I would misbehave. So I was always in trouble.
I never met
Okay, let's explain my mom. First off, I will tell you that of all the boys, I was favorite by far. I was. And no, I was her baby, and we had a very good relationship with everybody, and we loved her very much. We had a very close relationship. But my mom was very shy to everybody else. But to the people she knew, she was not shy at all. And if you had met her mother, who Sabrina's named after, my grandmother Romney, you would know where she gets her spiciness and her saltiness from. She was, and she was the prototypical mother bear. Her boys could be the worst kids in the world, and we were a lot of times. But she would defend and fight for you to the end, even if you were wrong, because that's what her job was as a mother. And so she was great. I don't know how she did it, but if you can imagine this, back in the old days, church wasn't like it is now, where it was in a 3-hour block. You had to get up, and the men went to priesthood in the morning, and then they came home and picked up the family and went back to Sunday school. And then you went home and had lunch, and then you came back at night for sacrament meeting. Well, by the time I was old enough to remember, my father was in the bishopric, so he was always meetings in the church. My mother had to get up and get 6 kids, all under the age of 7, ready for church. So let's see, Rick and Rob, there's 2 years apart, so let's see, Sharon was born, I would have been 3, Tom would have been 4, Tim would have been 6, and Rick and Rob would have been 8. So 6 kids, 8 and under. And she is getting them all ready for church at the same time in the car in the church with no help whatsoever. And somehow she made it. When the boys were born, the twin boys, imagine this, there's no formula, there's no plastic bottles, there's no disposable diapers. She has twins. Dad's gone to work all the time, and she is taking a pot of water, filling up glass bottles with whatever formula it was, and heating it over a stove, and using cloth diapers with safety pins, and then having to launder those every time you have a messy diaper. Somehow, through all that, she remained able to have her sanity. So I respect her. But this is something that she would have loved. Her big thing was she loved to have the family get together, whether it be at her house, at the lodge, or any place else. She wanted the family to get together, and what she would do is spend all her time preparing for it, getting it all ready, and once it was ready, then she would just fade back into the background and sit back and watch, and let everybody else do their thing, and that's the way she enjoyed it.
So what's your most memorable Christmas then? Because we're always getting together. What's your most memorable?
Christmas has been told when you guys were alive. Christmas when I was a kid.
When I was alive.
When you were alive, I didn't come back for Christmases very often because I moved down east. So
As an adult, as a child.
as a child, I can tell you very easily the one that I remember the most. And it's in that book. I don't know if you guys had a chance to look through that book with all the pictures in it. You'll see the picture of Grandpa Bob sitting there putting together a toy cannon, and I'm sitting there next to him. So we lived in a little small house, which you saw the picture of. And my grandpa Huckmeyer left some land to us, and my grandpa Bromley was going to build a house for us. And so he started building a house. And we had sold our little house to my mom's best friend, Marilyn Worthen, and her family. They needed to move out of their house, but we were ready to move into ours. So in this little, probably 1,500 square foot house, we had 6 kids in our family, 2 parents, 4 kids, or 2 kids in their family, 2 parents. So we had 8 kids and 4 adults living in this tiny small house. And so that one particular Christmas, they put the toys in the tree, they'd all gone to bed, and all 5 boys were in like an 11 by 11 room in bunk beds. Imagine 5 boys all in a room that small. We waited till they were asleep, and we snuck out and we started opening up all the presents. We started playing with them, and there was this toy bazooka, and my dad came out and was mad, and one of the boys shot him with the toy bazooka. and so we were all sent back to their rooms, and Christmas morning started a little bit later that morning. But you could see by the look in his face, you know, he was enjoying it. But the funny thing about Grandpa, he had this one thing they would always do. He was always worried that he wouldn't have enough money. I guess part of that was growing up, when Linda can probably vouch for this. When they grew up as kids, my grandfather, it was the Depression, and you weren't sure what was going to, come, whether or not you'd have a job and things like that. And Dad kind of grew up with that, so he was the same way. He was always like, I'm not sure I have enough money. With all us kids, he didn't have a lot of money. But so Christmas was tough for him because he wanted to see the kids have a great time, but he just couldn't see all that money being spent when he wasn't sure what was going to happen next. And so he would sit there and try and enjoy himself, and he'd watch present after present after present, and then finally, when it was too much, he would get up, he'd go outside, and he'd grab a rake and he'd rake the leaves. Because he didn't have much time at home, he worked so hard. Christmas was the time he was home, and in Seattle, Christmas time was the time to rake leaves. That's what they called it. And that was his way to cope with the stress of not knowing where he was going to get enough money. Well, anyway, so that was a Christmas I remember.
You talked about you and all the kids kind of getting into trouble. What was the most trouble you ever got in?
I'm going to take the fifth on.
That's probably wise.
We got in a lot of trouble, but so.
Some stories should
Okay,
die.
go.
No, this is like family history.
So no, let me.
You have to tell us.
No, I can't.
This has been passed down for generations.
No, I can't.
That's why you can't tell it.
So let me just say this. Sometimes we got into trouble because we were just active boys trying to find something to, keep us active. Sometimes, just like kids are, we were mean. And we were mean at people just because they were different than us sometimes. And I regret that. Somebody reminded me one time when we knocked on some woman's door who was a member of the church, her and her husband, and when he opened the door, we stood at the fence and threw eggs at him, which was horrible. And the only reason we did that was because he was a little bit different, and that wasn't bad. So I feel bad about that. Now, I will tell you one story we did that was bad, because Linda's here, and she remembers this. Linda lives in Downey. Downey's a very small town, and it has one police officer. We used to go there in the summertime. And around the 4th of July, you could buy fireworks then that you couldn't get in Seattle, like bottle rockets. And so Rick and Rob and Tim and Tom and I would get these bottle rockets, and then we'd make launchers. We'd get a piece of pipe, we'd block up the end, and we'd light the bottle rocket, drop it in the tube, hold it over our shoulder, and aim it in some place, and off it would go. If you squeeze the end of it, then it'd blow up in the end. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you may remember, I think the police guy came by the house several times, got us in trouble, didn't he?
I don't remember. He may have talked to the group, but he didn't talk to me. The town marshal lived next door to us.
We shot What did he tell you? He shot one through his window. Right through his window. Yeah, the one in the corner, right? Peak, there's a window right there. Yeah, we shot it through the window. Yeah, we were doing.
You mean through an open window or you broke the
No,
window?
no, open window. Yeah.
Nice shot.
We had a lot of practice, I guess. So no, we did. I mean, we were very active kids.
Very active.
So who picked on you? Like,
Nah.
Oh, did anybody?
Oh yes, they still do. You didn't see this?
There's always a pecking order.
Rob always was king, picked on everybody. Yeah, he would pick on everybody. And then it just went down from there. And since I was the youngest boy, I was the receiving end. So but then they always knew that if they finally pushed it too far, I would completely lose my temper. If they did, I'd kind of go crazy. So they'd all run away and wait till I cooled down and then start over again. But I have been tied up. I've been locked in a trunk. I have been locked in I've been thrown outside with nothing on but my underwear and all the doors and windows locked. You name it, it's been done to me.
But you didn't ever retaliate.
No, I think that
You should have completed the circle and gone after Rob.
no, you were in trouble with girls. Well, first off, Sharon was, like I said, probably the closest emotion to that. We were good friends. But Karen and Carol were like 5 or 6 years younger than me. So it wasn't until I came back from my mission that I really had any interaction with them other than they were just somebody living in the house with us. I mean, they were a lot younger than me. So,
so when you go to play sports,
so I was a runner. When they had this field day when you were 6th grade when you graduated, because that 6th grade was and you ran around the playground twice for the district tournament. And by the time I had finished, there wasn't anybody within half of the field from me, and I never knew that I was fast. But I guess growing up with several acres of woods around, and we would just constantly be outside running all the time. We had no idea that we were building up all this. So I went into junior high. In junior high, I was 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, but they had a rule on the track team in junior high. They had to be a 9th grader to run the distance races. And in 7th grade, I could beat everybody in the whole junior high school, but they wouldn't let me run the distance races. And they would make me run the 100-yard dash in high school, and I didn't like being embarrassed because I started liking girls then, and I didn't want to. And so I finally quit the track team because they wouldn't let me run my race. And I didn't run again until after I graduated from high school. And every time I entered a race, I ended up doing very well. In fact, there's a picture in that book that you guys have of Grandpa running the Mount Sinai Marathon. He and one of his vice presidents, a guy named Craig Rodney, had been training for this race to run a marathon. And that day, I was going to show up with his mom and cheer for him as he was running. Well, it turns out that Craig didn't show up. And so I said, well, I'll keep you company. And I grabbed his tag and threw it on and started running and ended up finishing the marathon without training for it. So I think my best time I ran a mile, I think it was around 5:05, something like that. But then, we played Little League baseball when we were kids, but as far as high school, I didn't play football until my senior year because Dad thought that if you played football, you would get hurt and wouldn't let us play football. So I finally convinced him to let me play my senior year, and I didn't play much at all. I played JV and practice, but the team won the 5A city championship for Turkey Bowl, and they were the best in the city of Seattle. But I didn't play much. I don't know if there's a way. It wasn't like it is today. There wasn't participation trophies. I know that.
So I've always known you to be the one with the gnarly mustache. What is the inspiration behind the mustache?
I don't know. It was the 80s. A lot of people had mustaches in the 80s. Yeah. Well, you have not seen the picture. I can show you a picture on my phone if I have it. So that I have a picture of me that my wife took, and she put the picture of Daryl Hall right next to it, and it looked identical with the curly hair out here and the big mustache. So, no, I just grew it. My wife thought I looked better with a mustache. So I kept it. But now, you know, I shaved it off for a couple of reasons. One, for when you get higher up in the church complaints, they ask you to not have patience. So that was one thing. But the other thing is that Grandma Beverly, Proudfoot Merritt, has a lot of red in her hair from her Scottish ancestry. And all of us boys, other than maybe Tom, have a lot of red in our beard. And what happens is you get older, that all turns white. So if I was to grow my beard and mustache now, it would be completely white, like most of theirs are. But my hair, I mean, I'm a little white around here, but not. And so people would say, "You dye your hair, don't you?" And I'm not that vain. I said, "No." So I started shaving so that they wouldn't think I dyed my hair.
So what from your life that we might not have asked about would you want other people to know about to help remember kind of who you are and kind of encapsulate? It doesn't have to be a specific experience, just maybe from your experience, you know, the wisdom of the years, something along those lines.
Yeah. The one thing I would say is that, you know, a lot of times people let a certain part of their life, something they did, define who they are. And you know, they try to live to what people think they are. But we can be whatever we want, and I'm a much different person as I've grown along and progressed. I'm still the same person, you know, as far as my personality and that, but the choices I make are a lot different. I think that the one thing that I learned the most from Dad was hard work. I knew that if you wanted anything like you had to work. I had a job from the time I remember. We were doing paper routes, everything else in our family. In order to make ends meet, whatever money you earned went into the family pot. You didn't keep it, and the family spent that money as it needed to do. My dad would try to keep track of what you put into the family by having a list. But in the end of the day, everybody put in and everybody contributed. I was working, I remember, as a junior and senior in high school, and all my money that I had was going to make the car payment for the car that was the family car. Because we didn't have that. And then this is where it's much different between when your mom grew up, is that as more of us kids moved out, Dad moved up in the company so that his amount that he earned was 10, 15, 20 times what it was, and he had so many less people to take care of that their life, trips, places they went, things they did, was completely different than us. We lived